What do we got for him, Billy? Well, Sam, out here we're playing Fight the Blight. All right, are you ready for Fight the Blight? The world has become infected. The blight is here, turning everyone into horrible, shambling zombies. And there is only one way to survive. Get your friends killed first so that you can live. The objective of this game is to be the final and only survivor of the blight, zombifying everybody else at the table until you are the winner. At the same time, you are trying to get your friends infected, ensuring that they all become horrible, shambling, festering, disgusting, eye-bleeding, mouth-watering because of monsters. None of your fellow players can be trusted because none of them can be permitted to survive. However, in Fight the Blight, death is not the end. When you become a zombie, you are given the opportunity to be revived and returned to life by sapping the life force of somebody else at the table. And you can go back into the running to become the game's winner. So, if you are going to fight the blight, first you must set up your game table. And you're going to start with this handy game board, which folds out, shows you where to place certain cards and certain decks, and that goes into the center of the play area where everybody can reach it. Second, you take the main deck, which has the skull symbol on the back of it. You shuffle that up and you place that on its place on the game board. Taking next, the aptly named Death Deck, the shadowy looking card back on the death deck, shuffle that up, place it on the game board in its allotted spot as well. Everybody then gets to choose a character that they want to play as, taking the character card, and they give you an extra little ability, and each of these has their human side and their zombie side. But you want to start with the human side with the green heart in the top corner face up because everybody starts the game alive. You take the festering deck. This is going to be shuffled and then a card dealt out at random to each player. These cards are placed face up in the player area and they're extra little abilities that you can use during the course of the game. Finally, you take the main deck and you shuffle it up. You deal 5 cards out to each player as their starting hand. However, if any player gets given one of these white blight cards as part of their opening hand, those go back into the main deck. The main deck gets shuffled up again, and then you deal out fresh cards to the player who had to give away their blight cards until everybody has 5 cards in their hand with no blight cards in them. And then you're basically ready to play.
Are you ready?
Oh, mate, I was born ready. How are you gonna stiff your friends, huh? Well, what you need to do is start raising that infection level. You're diabolical. Zombie flambe. Many cards in this game apply infection, which is represented on the card by a skull symbol down in the bottom right-hand corner. When these cards are played in front of a player, they indicate how high that player's level of infection is and how close they are coming to zombification. If a player has skulls equal to or exceeding the infection limit for that game, then they turn into a hungering zombie. But wait, don't leave just yet, zombie. If you have become zombified, you still have the opportunity to win the game if you are revived. And you revive yourself by zombifying whichever player happens to be in possession of the Golden Chalice.
Golden Chalice.
If you do this, you are revived, become human once more, and are back in the running to win the game. The infection limit depends on how many players are playing the game at the time, but in this example with these 3 players, me and my friends here, the infection limit is 7. So the question stands, how are you going to start raising the infection level of your fellows at the table? Well, let's start playing the game. In this example, we have 3 players, and the player that gets to go first is the one that does the best zombie impression.
Oh bother, I've turned into a zombie.
On your turn, you must take 3 actions, which can be any of the following. You can take the same action multiple times on your turn as well. The first type of action you may wish to take is to play a card from your hand. You take the card, you place it on the table, you read out the text, and resolve the gameplay effect. Most commonly, this is going to be to play a red card in front of another player and start raising their infection level. The red card is the main attack card of the game and contains the skulls in the lower corner that raises the infection level of your opponents. These are played in front of your opponents to raise their infection level. Not all red cards have skulls on them, however, and have a different effect written down, which is resolved when the card is played. You have to be able to resolve the effect of a card to be able to play it. So while a card might affect multiple players at the table, it doesn't have to affect every player at the table for that card to be played. The example I'm alluding to is the card Breach, which only affects players that have red cards with skulls on them in front of them. This means that you can play Breach even if only one player has red cards with skulls on them, but you can't play Breach if no players have red cards with skulls on them on the gameplay table in front of them. I also couldn't play Infect, for example, on any player that doesn't have any cards in their hand because Infect affects players that have cards in their hand. Any effects that resolve at the same time at the game table, such as repellent triggering for 2 players when there is a player, an opponent trying to play a red card on one of them, then the player whose active turn it is gets to choose in which order those effects are resolved. The second action you may wish to take is to draw a card from the main deck. You draw a card from the deck and you add it to your hand. However, if you draw a white blight card, it has to be played immediately. There is no limit to the number of cards that you can have in your hand, but keep in mind your opponents might be able to force you to discard cards, or they may steal cards from you if you hold on to them for too long. Note that any card effect that also has the text play or draw as part of that card's effect, doing so doesn't count as an extra action on your turn. The third action you may wish to take on your turn is to replenish an exhausted card. Using a defense card's ability will exhaust that card once the ability has resolved. Passive abilities are ongoing abilities that are in effect at all times. You can, of course, use an action on your turn to replenish your exhausted purple cards, giving you the ability to use them once more. Blue utility cards are from the main deck too and are always discarded once they have been played and their ability has been resolved. With that said, let's take a look at a typical turn in a game of Fight the Blight. It's your turn. What will you do for your first action? First, you choose to draw a card from the main deck, and you've drawn the research card. As your second action, you choose to play the research card from your hand, which has a couple of effects. First, you're able to look at the 3 cards on the top of the main deck, which in this circumstance are Nibble, Isolate, and the Blight. As part of Researcher's effect, you're able to add Nibble to your hand and place the other 2 cards back on top of the main deck in the order of your choosing. And you choose to place Blight at the top. Before you take your last action, you choose to use the once a turn ability on your character card, which allows you in this circumstance to take a look at the top card of the death deck and its decay. Excellent. The next player that draws the blight card that you left on top of the main deck is going to be forced to draw decay. Your deliciously malicious plan is coming together. As your final action, you choose to play Nibble in front of one of your opponents. This raises their infection to 7, which is the infection limit for this game, and they instantly transform into a zombie. When a player becomes zombified, follow the instructions that are on the included zombified card. But the 2 main effects that this has is they flip their character card over to the zombified side, and they are no longer in the running to win the game. At least for now. And the Golden Chalice changes possession to the player who currently has the least number of skulls positioned in front of them. How do you get revived and put yourself back in the running to win the game?
You barf.
Well, it's very simple. Whichever player has the golden chalice at any one time, you must hunt that player mercilessly, you must add infection to that player without any thought of the consequences, and you must be the one to raise their infection level above the limit to turn them into a zombie. Because once the golden chalice player becomes zombified, the player who inflicted that zombification, if they're a zombie themselves, are revived and back in the running to win the game. When a revival occurs, just follow the instructions that are on the revival card, which is the reverse side of the zombified card. First, the zombified player will flip their player card back to the fully green, healthy human side. Then they will discard all of their red cards. If they still have enough skulls in front of them to be zombified, they will discard all of their black cards. And the golden chalice will pass once more to the next player that has the least number of skulls currently in front of them. And that is how you fight the blight. If you want to grab a copy of Fight the Blight after having watched this video, there's a link in the description to the Ghostfire Gaming store, which can take you straight to the page where Fight the Blight lives. There is also a 2-player version of the rules, which is included in the game box, of course, and the expansion. You should check it out, it's pretty cool. My name is Ben Byrne, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. I'm going home. Get out there and hunt some zombies and fight the blight, because that's what we do, we fight it. The blight, oh, old-timey boxing style. Take it on.